I told you were going to do it. I put it in your brain.
Damn it.
In your brain. I love that. So I did it with myself.
That was hilarious. It's like the power it's a power of subliminal, but suggestion.
Suggestion, right? Yeah. So like I have that touch. Oh my goodness.
I'm going to call you Beyonce. Let's see what happens. All right.
Welcome to the Vet Med Wellness and Leadership Podcast, where we discuss central challenges vet med leaders face, such as burnout, stress, and difficult interactions with clients and staff, just to name a few. In each episode, you will hear about actionable solutions that you can apply to your practice and invitations to connect with fellow leaders who are passionate about improving the wellness of the vet med profession. By subscribing, liking, commenting, or sharing this podcast, you are helping more veterinary professionals find the resources shared in these episodes. Thank you in advance for listening and supporting this show. I hope you enjoy it.
So, hey, everybody. Crystal Stokes here, and joining me today is Renee Machel, co-founder of Get MotiVETed, which provides well-being solutions for veterinary professionals and organizations. She holds certifications as a yoga teacher, professional coach, and in mindfulness-based stress reduction. And today we are going to learn all about Get MotiVETed and GMU and how it supports the vet med community. So Rachel, thanks for being here today.
I'm going to have tears in my eyes. They're going to know we had some fun before we started recording. You know what I love? I think this should be our intro. And I'm watching, I watch podcasts all the time, and something's changed. Yeah. Oftentimes your podcast will start out like a clean start out, but I'm seeing more and more of podcasts starting out with a little bit of the beginning banter, because I don't know why, but I quite enjoy it. And so like a celebrity will sit down and be like, okay, what's the format? What do you want me to do? Because every podcast is different. Some takes callers, some don't take callers, some are like total conversations. There's no cohesive, there's no questions. It's basically like, I haven't seen you in 3 years. What's up? And I love that. So it's
less formal, right? Well, for those listening, let's do it. Let's do it, Renee, because you and I have known each other for a long time now, a hot minute. And we are going to let the intro be messy. And that's how we like to roll. And we are going to have a really cool conversation and let people just see it all hang out. How about that?
I love it. I sometimes even feel like if I were a newscaster or something, like I have a podcast voice sometimes. Do you feel that way? Like we're on now, and like you were just shooting the shit over here. And then you're like, oh, hello and welcome back to you. Like that's how I feel sometimes. But with you and I, like when we have our PM conversations, for me, because I'm on the East Coast, so it's always PM time. It's there's no mask, So anyway,
I really appreciate that, and I think that it's enjoyable to listen to people talk just authentically, covering things they love to talk about. And part of our connection, if we go back, is that we just had so much common ground and we work in a similar space. And I think we have similar values behind the businesses that we have founded. And that was really what brought us together. And I do want more people to know about Get MotiVETed and also Get MotiVETed University. We've talked so much about how some people might think we're in competition, but there's so much work to be done. There's just no competition. Like we need to replicate ourselves many, 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 many times for there to ever be competition with the amount of work and support that the vet med community needs. So I think that sharing with those listening, like kind of our origin, like how this all came to be, that we're in this space now of helping the vet med community in a different way, because you didn't start off here. Yeah.
No, I mean, it started off in the practice. So as a baby, like 15, 16 years old in the practice. And I spent my career, we'll say that first career. A lot of people have multiple careers, and that's kind of where I'm at, is like I'm on my next career. But I've spent 20 years in the practice, started out in kennels, and then worked my way through a general animal practice. So getting cross-trained in all of the different areas of the hospital. And I then spent the majority of my career as a technician and a team leader, but it wasn't without struggles. Okay. So we're talking, really going to date myself here though, like early 2000s, Detroit Metro, Michigan, when I was, say, 5 years in. And that is when things started to go awry for me in life. More so than in business, because I never left vet med. I definitely left school, but I struggled greatly with my physical health, with my mental health, and that's a cycle. If anyone knows about that, just last month I was reminded of how when I get stressed significantly, my body will react. And so I know people who they don't get stressed like that. And then B, even if they were, like, their body, they have such a bandwidth for it that their body won't fail them, but mine starts to fail me relatively early on. And I think there's a lot of science behind why that is. But needless to say, that is where I had to find solutions for myself, because what I was doing wasn't working to get me out of that space of struggling with my physical health and my mental health. And then after I was able to do that, where I could get to a place I felt confident in who I was stable, I was balanced, I stayed in vet med. And then I even moved to North Carolina, which is where I'm at now. And that's where I started to really, very cautiously share my story and find out that by that time in vet med, so now, we're flashing forward, that I was not an anomaly. And I never really was, probably, right? But I certainly wasn't at that point in time. I was not an anomaly, and the majority of vet med was struggling. But I had worked at a practice with my now business partner, and he's a veterinarian, Dr. Quincy Hawley, and we started to see how we functioned very similar to each other, and that when we started to talk, we had both overcome some of the same struggles and some of the different struggles that much of vet med is experiencing, whether it's some form of psychological distress, burnout, compassion fatigue, other physical ailments. And we decided that we could help people, but we weren't sure how to do that either. And so we sought out training to structure what we had put ourselves through. And that is where Get MotiVETed came from. That is where Get MotiVETed University, or GMU, came from. And we trained into how do we care for the caregivers, so that, because we could only, in a clinical role, you can only, help so many pets and pet parents and families. I can only touch this many people, right? Or animals. But if we can potentially impact those people, then that would replicate to the animals. So sort of in our number one passion of helping the animals would still be fulfilled, even if we're helping the caregivers. So that's how I'm here today. That's how Get MotiVETed was born, was on a soccer complex when we would eat lunch. And we had this idea that we could, the original idea was to write a book. And the book has not been published. We published a different book, but just like Get MotiVETed book wasn't published. But it really quickly morphed into one-on-one coaching, doing CE seminars, just our own CE seminars, and then eventually speaking at other events. and then looking for, well, what happens after the speaking event? And that's where GMU was born, because we wanted to give people somewhere to go so that they didn't lose momentum after, say, their 50-minute talk. Or potentially for someone who doesn't get a chance to go to a talk or have someone come into their hospital. As a company who serves all roles, as someone who started out in kennels, like I have this affinity for all the roles. There's going to be people who they've never been to a conference in their life. And so if we, if we don't get something nowadays, we've got like everything at our fingertips. But when I was growing, like we didn't have that. But even if you're in like rural America, like you might not be going places, so GMU serves as that self-paced platform where people can get access to, maybe it's their first strip of Get MotiVETed, or those continuous strips of well-being related content to get them, from where they're at right now in their life or in their career, where their organization's at, to what it is that they're envisioning, like bridging that gap, which I'm sure and probably a lot of your listeners know because you're you. And it's just a different way.
Right. And for them listeners, like Get MotiVETed, I think we should tell them how it's spelled, because it confuses a lot of people. So, yeah.
Yeah. So it's not motivated, it's MotiVETed. And so it's MOTIV, like Victor, ET, and ED. So V like Victor, E like Echo, T like Tango, and then ED like E, and then dog. So it's a play on words for all of our veterinary professionals out there.
I know. It's perfect. When you look at it, you see the big thing. We're like, vetted. That's me. So it's a place for you to go. It is. I really appreciate the story of your own personal experience, and same as your partner, that, it's comforting to say, I've been there. I understand a lot of what you're experiencing right now, and to have trust that there is a way through it. Because I think that for most of us, we have like the name of my company, Full Circle Lab, is that experience of starting at the top of the circle, of feeling so much hope and drive and desire to be in vet med. We enter into it with starry eyes, but through the course of life, whether that's in the clinic or not, or both, we end up at the bottom of that circle oftentimes. And down there is where we just don't feel like there's any way out. And that's where we see people leave the industry, people leave life. And, I just so appreciate that there is a program out there that is so accessible. I think that access to care is a big conversation in veterinary medicine for the pets. But now we also need to talk about access to care for the humans that are actually providing the medicine and the support. Like you mentioned, if you're in a rural community where you may not have the ability to travel to an awesome conference, or you may not be able to afford one-on-one coaching, you still have access to this awesome online university where you can go and just go at your own pace. Like if you're super busy and you only do one thing a month, great, you do one thing a month. I love your origin story. I love your model of care. I'm really curious if you would share, just giving us an idea of what we would expect if we go online. Like, what are the options? What are some of the things that you address? Like, if I'm listening and thinking, well, I'm struggling a bit. Like, I do feel pretty burned out and whipped at the end of the day. Sometimes I don't know if I want to go to work. I think about, do I want to be in this industry? Sometimes I feel super anxious and wired, and other days I feel so low energy and just flat and out of it. Maybe I'm struggling with my coworkers sometimes and just don't know who I can trust. And there's gossip in our team, and, just kind of experiencing a whole myriad of challenges that kind of go along with being a working professional, especially in vet med. How do I even get started? Like, what would I know? What would I see if I logged on?
Yeah. So if you go to if you go to our home site, that's like getmotivated.com. You're going to have, that's a place for if you're looking to book a speaker or learn about the company. You're going to see about the team, our mission, our vision, the types of services that we provide, who else is part of the team. We wouldn't be here if it were just Dr. Holly and myself. And so we have a lot of great people who have helped us get to where we are. And, it's that full circle of support that we have from the community. But if you get onto Get MotiVEted University, there are individual courses. We do our best to have, there's some of the titles, like a course that says, say, Design Your Life 360. That, to me, makes sense. But to someone else, they might go, well, what does that mean? Whereas you might find another one that says Compassion Fatigue 101, and that puts everyone on the same page. So most of them are not, hidden titles, but you might find one that's sort of cute, like Design Your Life 360, which is really creating a life of your design, and to do so as a whole person, because that was one of the first lessons I learned when I was coming out of what felt like my rock bottom, which is that I'm not a fragmented being. And yet I was being approached as one, which is why it takes us longer to become who we want to become or go where we want to go. And those things are two different things, but they work in tandem. And so you have individual courses. We just had someone log on the other day, and she, you can cherry pick. If you just want to say, I want to work on this one thing, like emotional intelligence or leadership or communication, like if that's where you're at, great. There are tracks, so much like you would see at a conference, to where there's going to be 4 hours in one module. And that's because communication is a big topic. And so there's multiple, sort of a track. GMU, it houses our largest program, which is the CVBP program, or the Vet Burnout Prep Certification. And that is 20 credit hours, most of which are RACE approved. There's 16 courses plus other content. And there's a handbook and syllabus. Like, we give you the roadmap. So even if you decide to enroll in that program, you're not just like, okay, I enrolled, now what? There's a welcome course. We teach you how to use how to navigate online, the platform, what to do next. You go through an orientation, you learn about the program itself. And then if you're a printed person like me, you can print your syllabus and handbook and map yourself. I have one sheet for everyone. There's core courses, there's elective courses, there's everything is there for you. And when people give us feedback as they're going through it, they might say, well, I was confused here. Because we're such a nimble group, right? We're not one of those big conglomerates. It's like, we can go, all right. And then we make that change. And so we take the feedback from the community to heart so that we make improvements. So if there is confusion along the way, we're making those adjustments to make it easier, more user-friendly. In a day where people are really skilled at their devices, we want the least amount of friction as possible and confusion for people, because they might not know that's why they stalled out, but oftentimes on the business end, they should kind of know that that's why their people are stalling out, or things like that. And so that's what they would see: individual courses, tracks, or bundles, those longer programs. And we try to help you, try to meet you where you are, so that if you don't know where to start, then you can connect with us and email us, and maybe even join. If you log on, the podcast is housed there. So if you start listening to the podcast, you automatically get access to the private communities, and you could pop into the community and say, hey guys, I'm new to the community. I don't know where I want to start. This is what I'm experiencing. And then you don't even just have to hear from us. Then you can talk to your other colleagues and people who have been part of the Get MotiVEted community for however long they've been a part of it. And they might be able to give you guidance.
I love this. What kind of feedback are you getting? Are there certain courses or bundles or tracks that have just been very popular? And what do you make of that?
Yeah. I'm really happy with our feedback. And you can do reviews on the courses. I would love to see those I would love to see more reviews, but a lot of the courses have reviews, and most of them are very, very positive. Again, if there's something like, there was one, the audio cut out at the end. Cool. We fixed that, stuff like that we can fix really quickly. The CVBP program at the beginning and at the end, so people have an entire year to complete it. Everyone, you can imagine, like there's thousands of people in it. So some people might take a couple of months, like 8 weeks, 16 weeks, something like that. Others might take that full year. We've had a couple who we've provided an extension for. So there's a wide range there. But if they get in it, they have the opportunity to take a ProQual, so professional quality of life assessment at the start of it and then at the end of it. And if you're not familiar with the ProQual survey for healthcare professionals specifically, it targets burnout, secondary trauma, or compassion fatigue, moral, like how do we have, support, perceived support, and then of course a couple other areas. And all of the areas, people who have completed it, everything's trending in the positive. Everything's trending in the right direction. And that was sort of the data piece that we were missing from having the individual courses. And I'm so proud of that data, especially as scientifics, or as the scientific community that we are, scientists. Mm-hmm. We want that, right? A lot of people are motivated by qualitative or quantitative results. And so we could have all of the testimonials in the world, and that's really cool. I read one the other day. I recorded after I read it, but I still haven't published it. I need to run it by Quincy or maybe you, because I'm like, I had just sobbed. I had just gotten done sobbing with joy. She was 30 days sober.
Yep. Amazing.
Yeah. I was like, you get stuff like that. When you create a product, you have, that you're going to get results from this sort of scientific method, right? Like you do these things, we know burnout's going to be lower. We know that we can get general, like your relationships are going to improve. But I've had people who have told me that it saved their marriage. They have a better relationship with their daughter, that the daughter who they thought wasn't listening, when they were doing the courses, sort of through osmosis, started to get the same mindset. And so now she's practicing the same things that mom or dad is. And then you get some results. Like I would have never marketed this program as that, but to have, and she's not the first one who said that, but to have, that's a really big deal. It's just remarkable. So you have people who are staying in the job. One of our most recent graduates, she didn't, clinic is still the same, right? Same place, same job, practice manager. But when she came into the program, that was the question on her mind, is is this the place for me? Is this the profession for me? And she chose to stay. And she's much happier, even though the team is this, she is getting a different experience, and that is what we want. And so, you can feel, this is what I get so overjoyed with these results, whether it's work or home, and the qualitative and the quantitative. That's kind of the stuff that keeps us going, because this is you and I talked about this a lot. Like, this is a lift. This is, even in the beginning, like, that men need so much, not so much support. When I read these things, when I talk with our students, when I meet them, I met one of our students. So virtual, right? Virtual space, got to meet her in person this past weekend. And I was like, that is so cool. Got to meet her in person. And when I hear this, that tells me this, keep going. Yeah, it's just,
I know. I find myself thinking as I listen to you of how I wish I'd found something like that when I was earlier in my journey, like what a difference it would have made. And I think that knowing me, I probably would have been comfortable starting something virtual. Whereas if it was offered in person, I don't think I would have done it at that point in my life. Like my younger years, I was so independent and had the story that I should be able to figure everything out myself. And so the vulnerability of like going to a group course or doing a one-on-one session, I don't think I would have done it, because in my head, I would have had the story that I just need information. Like I love knowledge, but I didn't want to be vulnerable. So the way of being able to just do it online and like absorb content, even though it is content that is very personal, I think that would have been a very appealing starting point for someone like me back then. And and I just also, I am so astounded, I think is the right word, with how much you care, right? Like the level of heart and knowledge, like brain and heart together, that you two have put into building this. I think it really, you can feel it when people are engaging with the material, that it's like, oh, it's curated just for you all. Like it's so niche. It's very focused. You all know the pain points because you've lived them. And then you've gone out and tirelessly scoured all of the banks of knowledge to bring things together to say, these are the evidence-based strategies for addressing some of the major pain points that we are experiencing as a profession. It is really powerful.
Yeah, I agree with you. I made that post on LinkedIn. I think I was talking with one of our students who shared a different post. And I said, could you imagine if we had this when we were 20 or 10 or whatever and the cool part is that we are starting to see more life skills be adopted in our younger ages. But I was much like you. This was like I said, the dawn of the internet when I was struggling, but that is where I first turned, was the sciences. And I was online, like looking, because what was at my fingertips, we're talking again, early, like Detroit, Metro Michigan, there weren't places like this. And even when I read, like if you read about Tony Robbins, like Tony is who he is because he had the opportunity to go to a seminar and it changed his life. Like no one took me to a seminar. And like you, like, I don't know for certain that had I gone to a seminar, it would have been I don't know. I don't think that there's any way to know, but I think it's safe to say we are all different people in different parts of the country at different parts of our life in different seasons. And so when you were saying earlier, like the Full Circle Lab, I'm working on Renee 3.0 right now because I'm coming into being 40. Some things have changed for me internally over the past few years, but definitely over the past year. And because of my work as a coach, I know what other people who are in their 60s have said about, say, their 40s and their 50s and where they're at in their 60s. And that they're still working on themselves. And so it's like, I am very well aware that I'm coming into a new season of my life where there will be some similar struggles, like maybe anxiety has a different outfit on, but she's still like, hey, I'm anxiety. Do you want to go out to play today? And maybe we'll coin the term. I'm trying to coin this term. Tell me if you've ever heard of this, Crystal, because we've all heard of anxiety attacks. We've all heard of panic attacks. And I haven't talked this over with our mental health professional yet, on staff. But so he might tell me to stop coining terms. So this is not MHP approved, but I want to coin depression attacks. As someone who has a very direct relationship, like in my own experience and professionally with like mental health, I've never heard of a depression attack, but I am almost certain that I am experiencing them. Like not momentary, sort of confined because of the tools that I have, but it's something, it's not an anxiety attack. It's not total panic. It's something else. Mm-hmm. And I think it's sort of these, it's just different. And so, and with what you're saying as far as like being vulnerable, it's like, I want to continue to work in our space and do what we do, but I also want to be somewhat transparent enough. That was my thing, is as a young individual, it was privacy. And even now I still value that, but it would be a total rabbit hole of what we consider to be private, but also the motivating factors of why we need to be that private. And when is it privacy and when is it masking and imposters and like all these different things that come up. But private was where I was at, at a young age. And I would look at those things on movies like, oh, if I could just go to a support group and I was just watching this on a podcast the other day. I think back then, even now, I'm okay. I'm more comfortable. Let's put it that way. I'm more comfortable when I feel like if I'm going to be vulnerable, that people wouldn't judge that. Right. And so if you're in a support group or something, you're less likely to be judged because you've got other people who are going, like you said, I've been there. Believe me, that's certainly not the worst thing I've ever done. And I think the majority of VetMed is maybe resonates with our stories, but guaranteed we're being judged. And so that can sometimes hold people back from sharing. But I think we're getting more, like we've adjusted our transparency settings as a society, where when we start to talk about things that would 20 years ago be, say, TMI, like perimenopause, people didn't talk about that. They didn't talk about the things that we talk about now. And I won't run down the list, but if you've been on this planet for 30 years or more, you know that the things that we talk about publicly have changed. And so I hope that like as we come into this next season of our lives and our careers, that we can continue to share in a way that is meaningful to people, but also helps them so that here's the biggest thing. It took me almost 10 years to get through my mud. And like with GMU or just your program, like it's the fast track. That's what I want for people. It's the fast track. And that's what's really inspiring, say, about Tony or anyone else who does this kind of work, is that it doesn't have to take other people decades to become who they want to be, or even looking forward, go, who do I want to be? And then work towards that. So that's what's most inspiring to me about like you said, the multiple companies, say in one space or just in the world, because it's outside of VetMed that you and I created our solutions, right? Because the solutions didn't exist in VetMed 10 years ago. So that's what gives me hope as a human, is that like there's someone else out there who embodies the characteristics that I want to, embrace, and who has the skills that I need to learn and the lifestyle that I want to lead. And I think it's, through the spirit of collaboration, like what we're doing right now, and being able to connect with people, that sort of unlocks that access, if that makes sense.
I love collaboration and connection, the double C's. Absolutely. As you're talking about this, I'm thinking about those who may be listening. I know for me as a listener, I always love takeaways. Like often when I listen to a podcast, I'm kind of doing something else. Maybe I'm driving and I'm like, oh my gosh, there was so much good content, but I'm not going to store any of it because I don't have a way to take notes right now. So for those listening, if you're just to leave them for like two things, like, even if you forget most of what we were riffing on today in this awesome conversation, but we want you to hang on to two things. What would those two things be? And they can be something new or something we already covered.
I think that there's hope. I think that's the biggest one, is that there's hope.
Yeah.
Like wherever you are at right now, there is a way up, and you're not alone in that.
Yeah.
And there are so many ways with who you are and how you like to consume your content, how you like to learn, and how you like to integrate things into your life. Like there is something for you. There is a person for you. There is a book for you. There is a program for you. There is something for you. And whether that's big and you are ready to take massive action and really, do a 360, cool. Or if you're like, I've got the bandwidth to read chapter 1 today, that's cool too. And so that's it. Just like, you're not alone and there is hope.
Beautiful. Oh, I wish I could go back in time and meet you now. Yeah. 20 years back, it would have been amazing, but here we are. And I'm so glad that we are along this path together. These kind of conversations really fill my cup. And for those listening today, I want them to connect with you guys. Renee and Quincy are really, really available. I'd love for you to share with them, the audience today, where can they find you? What's the best way for them to connect if they want to learn more or just like dabble around the background and see what's happening at Get MotiVETed University?
Yeah, so you can go to the websites like getmotivated.com or getmotiveteduniversity.com. If all of that is a mouthful and there's typos and autocorrect, you can find me on LinkedIn. My last name, of course, will probably be another one of those things that autocorrect will fix. But I'm on LinkedIn. We're on your, favorite social media platforms with the exception of a couple. But if you Google it, chances are you'll find us, as long as you have that E in there and not an A. If you go to, if it's Get MotiVETed, someone's probably going to try to help you work out. Or some.
Right. And I'll put all this in the show notes too. So don't worry about having to spell it. Just scroll down the show notes and we'll connect all of your socials and your websites there so people can find you. And Renee, I've just enjoyed this conversation so much. I really appreciate you being on.
Thanks for having me, Crystal. And for the listeners, since I have talked so much, you can hear more from Crystal in a while when she comes on the exploratory, and I will be the one that's a little bit quieter. So, and we're gonna spend some more time together for that one. I'm gonna
a longer form podcast. That's gonna be really fun. I gotta do some heavy lifting. Get ready.
No, we're gonna do 6 days. It's all gonna be riffing. Oh yeah. Okay. Thank you guys all so much for listening. I'm really excited to connect with your people and bring others together, because you never know where you're going to find someone that you like, where you're going to find your Renee and Crystal. It could be in the GMU group. Who knows?
Exactly. Please reach out, check out her stuff. It is awesome. And I look forward to our recording date.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for joining me today. I hope that you feel stoked after listening to this episode. And as always, I would love to hear your comments and feedback. Is there a topic that you want to know more about? Please let me know.
And thank you again for subscribing and sharing your favorite episodes with others. It really means a lot.